Hello everyone, this video is showing you how I darn and stitch and jet glue my Pointe shoes. I'm going to have the timestamps on the screen. So this is your timestamps for darning the shoes. This is your timestamps for jet gluing the shoes. And this is your timestamps for sewing the elastics and the ribbons. Please note that I machine stitch my elastics and ribbons. So if you are looking for hand stitching, let me know. I can always do one in the future, but I have been given my mum's old sewing machine, so I now machine stitch my ribbons and elastics because it saves me so much time. So why wouldn't I do it? Okay, so this is the section about how to darn your Pointe shoes. There's 700 million different ways how to darn them. I honestly find this the easiest way. Here's a few things you're going to need. Obviously, a pair of Pointe shoes. You can redarn shoes, and often you will need to because it will come a little bit undone or a little bit burnt through. But it's always easiest if you darn on a newer pair. You're going to need a pair of Pointe shoes. It's easier if they don't have the inbuilt suede ends on them to darn. If yours have suede ends and you want to darn, you might want to consider getting a pair that doesn't. So we're kind of looking for satin ends. Then you're going to need a needle. So I use a crochet needle. So you can see it's a little bit curved, right? It's a little bit curved. And also make sure that they're not too long. You only need kind of like a ditty size. And then I'm going to show you how I make the thread into quadruple. So you see there's actually it's quadruple on each side, and then all of that gets put together. So it ends up being really, really thick. Then you're also going to want Pointe shoe, darning thread. I got this secondhand. It was about £7 and it was the hugest roll you've ever seen. You can order, obviously this is not sponsored, you can order from Move Dance. This is the Tondu one. Obviously it is quite a bit less, but it still does the trick. And this is a little bit pinkier. This is a little bit more kind of beige tone. So it just keep that in mind. And you're also going to want some kind of thimble because you do sometimes have to really push your needle a little bit. So a thimble, I just have a rubber one, nothing fancy. You don't need anything crazy. And pair of scissors. Don't use big kitchen scissors. Just get some little scissors. We're going to grab so much thread. Now, what you need to keep in mind, I would say this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is an insane amount of thread. Okay, it's absolutely insane. I'm wild. There's probably so many other ways of doing this, but this is how I do it and it works for me. So we cut it. Okay, now there are going to be little knots, and this is also why I go for a lot more thread than I might actually need, because you might have to end up sacrificing a little bit. So I'm trying to be as clear as possible. So I've got my one end. Now I'm just trying to this end, I'm keeping an eye on it. So I'm just going to let it drop to the floor. So it's currently on the floor. Now, as I'm going, I'm just really gently running my fingers. So you see, I've got a little thing incoming. So rather than pulling, I'm just really gently teasing. Yeah. So you don't want to pull so we're just kind of teasing through it. This thread is actually behaving quite nicely. Sometimes I really am having to battle. There we go. Perfect. Going through. Ta-da! So, got my other end. So I'm going to find my end. And you are going to end up with lots of knots. But as I say, that's fine. That's why we've gone for loads of thread. Bringing the two ends together. Then we're just going to make a knot. Yep, nothing fancy. It's just we now have these two ends. Yep, so now we're working in doubles. So I'm going to go my way through again. Then I've got these two. So I've got, you see, I've got my gaps here. So I'm going to work my way. Make sure that you're not ending up separating the threads. We have to keep them in their double. So now equal. Then bring the 4 ends together. Then you're going to knot. Okay? So now we have knots, and then there's 4 sets. And you see it's still really, really long. But obviously you are going to lose a little bit on the way. Then what I tend to do is I've got this as a loop here. I'm going to cut through because this is going to be way easier to feed through a needle than it is to do the loops. You absolutely can do the loops through, but honestly, there's not really much point. I tend to lick the thread. Literally, don't judge me. Then I'm feeding it through the eyelet of the needle. So this takes a lot of patience. So I, in a first pass, managed to get, I don't know if you can see, I got 2 through. I got another 2 to get through. So I'm going to just pull that through. So I know that that's secure. It's not going to come out. About equal. There we go. So what we're going to do, I don't tend to wear my thimble all the time. I just get it when I need it. So the satin, when you first start sewing, can be a little bit tricky. So I'm really going for the satin. Yeah. So you never want to push into your point shoe because that's just going on the inner bit. We're trying to separate the satin from the base. Yeah. So I'm going for this. Then I'm going to push through. Bring it up. Now, if when you pull your needle, there's resistance, don't yank it. You're going to break your needle inside the satin and then it becomes a bit of a nightmare. So I'm feeling a little bit of pressure. Look, I'm just wiggling. There we go. Wiggle, wiggle. And then it comes straight up. So this I'm doing as my first one. I have knotted them. Yeah. Please don't do the, oh, I'm not going to knot technique. Knot it. Because people go, oh, you shouldn't knot it because it's going to impact. No, it doesn't, because the knot gets flat. Like, and you also trim the excess off. So please knot it because you're going to thank yourself. Then you want the thread to kind of be like here. Okay. Then all you do is just go again, kind of like next to it. Go through the satin. So we've started like just a straight stitch to begin us off. Again, I'm just going to do a little wiggle because I can feel it resisting because it's the first pass. And then look, pull, 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 pull. Ta-da! There we go. You see? Just like that. Okay? Then we're just going to go again. So boom, through, pull. Also, these shoes are so much easier to stitch than the Lease ones. The Lease ones are an absolute nightmare. Ta-da! And you just go around. So there. Oh my God, these are so much nicer to stitch than the Lease ones. It's actually insane. And through. So you see, we're starting to get a little bit of a thing. Now we're kind of aiming for the round bit, but we're going to do several passes. So if you have gone a little bit wonkadoodle, it's fine because then you can kind of like fill it as you go. You always want to make sure that the thread is on this side because otherwise you're not going to get that little stitch. You are also stitching in a anti-clockwise direction. Yeah. I always tend to start bottom left and then just work my way around. So I'll say that again. You're going in a anti-clockwise direction. It doesn't really matter. Come on. It doesn't really matter like the distance of your stitches. It's your first pass, but kind of like as equal as you can get it, but literally like, come on, it's fine. So then I'm going around. I'll probably speed up at this point. Okay, so this is the first pass. So I'm just stitching it off, literally. I stitched through. I'm trying to aim for where the other knot is. So before I pull it, you see that there's like a little hole here. I'm just gonna go back through, knot, and like this pull, and then cut, boom, done. Obviously don't cut the knot, you're cutting like all the fabric around it. Then the same thing here. So I'm just cutting that. And then as you're stitching around, so you see how this little knot is like sticking out, that'll then end up getting stitched in. So after you've done a pass, we're going to do the stand test, okay? So a point you should be able to stand by itself. Look, literally, it can't. So this is obviously nowhere near the amount. For context, let me find one. So let's do a comparison. Look at how much this has got. I mean, that little knot like is there, but really, like as you do your point, it's fine. So look, one here. Look, big difference. Yeah, so it's a really big difference. You can find this in boys, in like any seamstressing shop, is beeswax. Now mine is like literally, like look at how much I've used this. But this, you would like run your thread through it, and what it does is it just kind of like coats it a little bit, and it makes it less likely to knot. So it kind of depends on what thread you're working with, because if you're working with like a thicker kind of wool, don't do this because it's just going to end up fraying. Like, please don't do this. But if you're working with like, as I would call, darning for point shoe thread, yeah, you can definitely do this. So here we go. I'm always kind of starting my knots in the same place because it just makes it easier. And then I am just kind of like tuck. You see this one that's sticking out? I'm just going to kind of like tuck it in so that as I'm going, I'm going to end up stitching over it. So you always start just by doing a pull through. Wiggle, 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 through. Bam! Okay, then grab. Do the grab and go. This is now the second pass. So, second pass. Ta-da! So, yeah, this is literally, you should be able to do it. So, my lease, oh my God, my block lease, the satin. So this satin is dreamy on the Euro stretch. Like the lease ones, I had to do like 4 passes. Like this is what, like it's so much more passes. But this, I had such a nightmare with like the lease shoes. I don't know if it's like the pair that I got but it also broke 4 needles. This shoe. Not very happy. So, and I've never had a pair that did that. So it must just be that it's something with this shoe, but like this particular shoe. But yeah, the satin like doesn't like have any kind of give. Like you can't like feel as you pinch it like comes with you. Whereas with this, like I can feel it's not like coming with me, but like I can feel that little bit of movement. So then that means that it's easier to stitch. So yeah, as I say, second pass. Okay, so this section is about jet gluing your point shoes. Just to note, you really have to do this at the start. Contrary to what people say, you can't really bring point shoes back to life. You might, if you have a really dead pair, be able to use some jet glue or point shoe glue to get you an extra hour or so out of your shoes. But once they're dead, they're kind of dead. I use this glue. There's lots of different types of glues you can use, but I will also link it in the description. I just kind of prefer ones that I know that are okay for point shoes. And I would honestly say probably a bottle will get you about 4 pairs. Also, you can also see that my shoe is literally just like, and this one. So you also want to be able to make sure that your shoes can do this, because that's just going to be the easiest way to help them dry. You're going to make sure that the drawstrings are out, okay, because we don't want those to get glued in. Drawstrings are out. I'm just going to take like a good amount and just pop it on the, like, where the box is, down at the bottom. You're just getting a little bit. You're probably not going to be able to see. Oh, you actually kind of can. Just like that. And then I tap. And then also just do like little circles just to make sure that it's all dried. Some people glue on the outside. I'll only kind of do this if I'm like, oh, I kind of could use this pair for like another hour or so. I kind of need them to give it extra support. I'm just going to take out actually the little sticky label on the inside of the point shoe. And then I'm just going to go for the kind of point of the arch. So I also have checked on the outside as to where that point is. I don't tend to put like too much, just a little layer, because for me, I do kind of want that part of my shank, just like, I don't want it to be super, super, super tough. There we go. So this is a different day, and I am going to be showing you how I machine stitch my elastics and point shoes. So here they are, fully jet glued. So they are good to go. They feel nice and crunchy, nice and dry. Another little pro tip with your jet glue, you kind of want to put them like above like a radiator or somewhere that's going to help them dry. So things you're going to need. You're going to need thread that matches the color of your point shoe. Yeah, not everyone has pink point shoes, so make sure that the thread matches your point shoe. I use Gutterman thread, okay? It's the best one. Then you're also going to need, this is if you're doing elastics and ribbons, okay? So this is the kind of elastic that I use, kind of like a point shoe ribbon. You absolutely can use like a thick elastic as well. I just personally like these ones. I feel like they don't dig into my feet as much. So you're going to need, I've just got kind of little scraps. So that's going to be enough for a pair for me. You are, of course, going to need a pair of scissors. And then I actually have 2 ribbons. So I'm going to choose the newer ones. These are, none of this is sponsored, by the way, obviously. These are like block ones. Oh, these are kind of like, oh, these do feel different. Oh, I think I like these. These feel different from my usual ones. So I get these ones so that they've got the elastic in the middle of them and then the satin here. That's just what I enjoy. So that's what you're going to need. And also, obviously, what you're going to need is a sewing machine. Oh my God, this is really heavy. So, disclaimer, I'm not a seamstress. So any seamstresses watching this video, don't cringe. I am just doing a box job, so I don't have to spend 300 hours hand stitching my ribbons and my elastics. Okay. First thing we're going to do is we're going to stitch our ribbons. So we're going to grab a ribbon. You want the kind of part that looks like it's inside, as if it's going to be the inside, and you're wanting the shorter part of the ribbon to get parceled in. So what we're going to do is I just kind of like fold it 1, 2, 3. So then it ends up looking like a little parcel, a little gift. Then I'm kind of going on like the like seam, and I'm placing it so that it's gonna follow my foot when I'm putting it on. There we go. Now, so a lot of people are going to be like, oh, but you can see the thread on the outside. Do you honestly think you're going to be able to see this on stage? Look at me in my face and tell me that you're going to be able to see this on stage. Have you seen, like, let's talk wigs, okay? Have y'all seen, like, the lace fronts like this on, like, the West End singers? And you can't see that on stage. Like, the mics are here, you can't see that on stage. Do you honestly think you're going to be able to see, like, obviously I need to cut all these bits off, but do you honestly think you're going to be able to see that? Like, come on. So there is this kind of thing that it's like, oh, it can't go through the fabric. Like, seriously, you're going to be spending so much more time just trying to, like, oh, I don't want it to go through the thing, and why? Like, come on. Life is precious. Time is precious. Save yourself time. This is now like, she ain't going anywhere. So I'm going to change angles so you can hopefully see a little bit better. Obviously, please make sure in between that your foot is like well away from the pedal, and all that kind of stuff. So now it's time for the jewel elastics. The best thing to do is you're going to quickly pop the shoe on, then I allow like a little bit like that across to the kind of back edge of it, and then I've roughly got my measurement. Then I'm gonna chop that, then literally replicate. Yeah, that's about right. And then literally last one, which I'm just gonna kind of trim down a little bit. And then we've got 4. So just because it was a little bit hard for you to see, essentially, I'm heading for this part. So you go here and there. So it's going to end up like I'm having to do a serious sickle. But you know what I mean? It's like crossed across the foot. Honestly, every single person is different. So you're just going to kind of have to figure out like where you want your crisscross to be. Okay. Now you kind of want, there's 2 sides to this. There's a really kind of like rough ridged edge. That's the bit that you want on your actual foot, because that just gives you an extra tiny little bit of grip. Okay. So I tend to go like just a little bit above the ribbon, but that's also why I do my ribbons first, because sometimes like there can be a teeny bit of overlap. So go for your ribbons first, then your elastics, because now, like you see, there's a little bit of overlap. That doesn't matter, okay? But you want your ribbons to sit completely flat. Whereas the elastic, it's okay. There can be a little bit of bunch because at the end of the day, this is just to kind of help it go on your foot. So I'm also going to show you, because I had someone ask me on Instagram, how to stitch the elastics, hand stitching. So also doing them by machine can be quite finicky because you're not kind of going on the flat edge of the shoe, you're going on the stitch edge. So let's bring you down. So again, we're kind of feeling for that rough edge here, placing them kind of like so. Got a double knot. Then essentially what you want to do is just literally weave in and out of like think of the little lines if you're using these elastics as a guide of like, oh, I want to go in and out kind of thing. Also, I'm just kind of stitching on the top edge of the elastic. You absolutely can go like throughout the whole thing, but this part of the shoe is much harder to stitch than this part. So I'm just doing it for ease, that I'm just kind of going on the top edge a few times. I've never had an elastic break by doing this method, but you absolutely can just kind of go through the rest of the shoe as well, should you wish, but it also depends what shoe you have. Mine, even with a thimble, would honestly like break a good needle or two if I tried to stitch it in like this part of the shoe. So I'm just going on the top edge, but I'm going quite a few times. Take a little stitch just before you pull it and it becomes like a full thing. You see you got a little loop here. You're going to go through that, pull, take another stitch, and that's your knot. And then I also found these, which are better scissors than the ones that I had before. And then I'm just making sure that any kind of loose bits are done. And there you have it. So that's just kind of what it looks like. And even if you are using a machine, okay, I can't really find a good way to stitch the back part of the shoe. Okay, I personally struggle with it. So I always just hand stitch the back part. So when I'm doing crisscross, I'm kind of hitting these areas. So you double your thread up, then you're going to make a little knot at the end. Some people are like, you don't need knots. Yes, you do. If you don't want all your stitching to come out. I'm sure there's way better ways to do knots. This is just how I do them. I literally just do a knot, and then there we have it. Then you kind of want about this amount of tension, not too much. As I say, at the end of the day, you can always undo your stitching. It's not the end of the world, so you can always undo it, okay? So that should be all good. Then the final thing you're gonna do is you're gonna cut your ribbon, and then you're gonna literally, if you're quite little, please don't do this yourself. And I'm also crazy because I'm doing it against my skin. Please exercise caution. But this is just gonna singe, and then there you go, point shoes done.